Welcome to YouTooSpain. Skatz here. On this video I'm going to explain the 90-180-day Schengen rule. I'll explain whether it applies to you and how to work out how many days you have left to visit the Schengen area. Also, I'll clear up any confusion between the Schengen rules and the 90-day residency rule for individual countries, and the 183-day tax residency rule that you may also have heard about. I've created chapter headings down here and in the video description, so you can scroll directly to any answers you need answering, so check those out. I've also put loads of links in the video description below to official websites full of more detailed information, because there's always an it depends. Everyone's circumstances are different. You can always leave a comment below with any questions and I'll guide you to the answers you need. Whatever you need to know and whoever you are, you're all very welcome to YouTooSpain. Roll the theme tune. Let's dive straight in, my beautiful friends. Oh, yes, you are. First of all, what is the Schengen Area? Well, it's a group of European countries with no internal borders, which makes travel and trade much easier within that area. If you imagine those countries in one big block, there's just one outer border. So if you sail in or drive in, there will be border controls where you'll need to show your passport. Of course, you can fly directly into any of the individual countries too, bypassing the outer land borders. So basically, all of the airports act like a virtual outer border too, where your passports will be checked. But once you're in, you can travel from country to country without needing to go through border controls and show your passport. Is that all clear? Good. Next question. What is the 90-180-day rule? And who does it apply to? So, if you're a citizen of an EU country or travelling with a spouse who's an EU citizen, the 90-180-day rule does not apply to you. However, if you're a citizen of a non-EU country and you're not travelling with an EU spouse, you can only spend a total of 90 days in any 180-day period in the Schengen area. Those days don't have to be consecutive. It could be a weekend in France, then a gap of a few weeks, then a month in Spain, another gap, and then a few weeks in Belgium. You get the picture. Just add up the days you've spent in the Schengen area within a period of 180 days, and it can't be more than 90. Now, importantly, this period of 180 days is what we call a rolling period of days. What on earth does that mean? I'll get to that in a few minutes, because it can cause some confusion when you're travelling in and out a lot. But before that, some other questions to clear up. What happens if you break the 90-180-day rule and overstay in the Schengen area? Well, you could be fined or deported if you break the rule, and you could also be barred from entering the Schengen area for a period of a couple of years. And if at some point you wanted to become a resident or citizen of an EU country, your record of overstaying could be held against you. It's just not worth risking it. Does the 90-180-day rule apply if you're a non-EU citizen with residency of an EU country? It depends. In this case, you're allowed to stay in that one country as long as your residency allows. But if you travel outside of that country to another Schengen country, you need to follow the 90-180-day rule. That's because becoming a resident of an EU country doesn't make you a citizen of that country or of the EU. They're very different things. You can apply for citizenship once you've been in a country for a certain length of time, but that's a whole other video. Is the Schengen area the same as the EU? Well, no, it isn't. There are countries that fall into both categories, and there are some European countries that are in neither category, but there are also EU countries that aren't in the Schengen area and countries with a Schengen agreement that aren't in the EU. And there are also some countries and principalities that are said to be within the Schengen agreement for various reasons. It's a bit complicated. However, I've put a link in the video description below to a very helpful website with a colour-coded map and lists of countries. It's well worth checking it out if you're a non-EU citizen planning to travel in Europe. And by the way, if you're wanting to travel to Ireland, that's a special case. There's a link all about that below as well. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the Schengen visa. Do you need one to get into the Schengen area? This depends on your passport. EU citizens, of course, don't need visas to get into the Schengen area. All other countries' citizens, that we call third country nationals, technically need a Schengen visa. However, the citizens of 63 of these countries have what's called an automatic visa waiver, so they can travel into the area without applying for a Schengen visa. If you're not from one of those countries, then you should contact your local consulate of the Schengen country you'll be landing in for details of how to apply for this travel visa. With the new entry-exit system, or EES, coming into force on November the 10th of this year, hopefully, non-EU citizens will have their biometric passports scanned, which will make it easier for border guards to check whether you're okay to travel. In 2025, there will be a visa waiver called ETIAS to apply for, and that will be for all non-EU citizens who aren't travelling with an EU citizen spouse and who don't hold a residency permit for an EU country. Watch my recent video about the EES and ETIAS for more details. Right, let's get to the big tricky question. What is the rolling 180-day period? This is definitely what confuses the most people about the 90-180 rule. And if anyone says to you, oh, it's easy, you just count backwards 180 days, then trust me, there are almost always more questions to answer. I recently had a 45-minute video call with a very intelligent man from New York who was having a few problems understanding the numbers on the Schengen Visa Calculator he was using, and he just couldn't get his head round what it was showing and how it related to the days he wanted to spend in Spain. Especially as he wasn't just a tourist. He needed to take various work trips here too, and sometimes he doesn't get much warning from his boss, so he has to be very careful that he doesn't overstay and be even more careful of not booking too many holidays in the future in case he suddenly has to take a work trip in between now and then. Here's my explanation of the rolling 180-day period, and I think you'll see what the problem is. But if you're still confused after this, don't panic. I have a solution for you. So, imagine this. Today is always day 180. Always. Just remember that. And that doesn't mean that a whole new 180-day period starts the next day. No, forget about the future just for now. Just count backwards from today, day number 180, all the way back to day 1 in the past. That's about 6 months ago. Then count how many days within this period you've spent in the Schengen area. That's the easy bit. But now, let's look into the future. Ooh, what happens to this 180-day period when we get to tomorrow? Well, when tomorrow comes, it's not tomorrow anymore from your point of view. It's today. So remember, today is always day 180. That means day 180 has moved forward one day. And so has day 179, and all of the days all the way back to day 1 have moved as well. The whole 180-day block or period has rolled forward one day. What used to be day 1, the other side of here, is no longer in this block of 180 days. It's outside of it. It's over there. So if you spent that day in Schengen, it doesn't count in your new calculation of the number of days spent in Schengen in this 180-day period. It's fallen off the end. Is that clear? So how does that relate to how you work out how many days you've got left to spend in the Schengen area at other dates in the future? That's that way, that unknown period over there. Well, what you have to do to begin with is imagine yourself in the future on the day that you plan to leave the Schengen area at the end of your visit, and that becomes today, day 180. And this is your new period. You just count backwards from there, the day that you're about to leave. Okay, so once you get your head around that, it's all relatively easy to understand each 180-day calculation as it moves forward in time. And while you don't want to be sitting around counting lots of 180-day periods if you're going to be spending, a few weeks here and a few weeks there in the Schengen area, it doesn't take a very complicated app or spreadsheet to add in those dates in the future and calculate how long you have to wait until enough days have fallen off the beginning of your moving 180-day period to allow you to book some travel time at the end of it. Here's a question then. Why did your New York friend that you mentioned earlier have problems with fully understanding his Schengen visa calculations? And are all of the online Schengen visa calculators and apps capable of keeping you absolutely safe from overstaying? Okay, now this is the really tricky part. Stay with me though, it's worth it. Lots of people use the many available Schengen calculators to work out their available holiday or work time, and they usually seem quite happy with the results, even though I've checked and reviewed plenty of them, and they don't always give the same answers or especially have the capability to look into the future, and some that appear to have the capability to look into the future are missing one vital element. So, let's go back to our friend in New York. He wanted to delve a little bit deeper because the numbers shown under each calendar date on the calculator didn't always make sense. You see, he spent some time in Spain recently, not all consecutive, and he wants to spend some time over the Christmas period here too. Plus, he wants to spend 3 months in Spain next summer. And once he books those holidays and sets them in stone in his Schengen calculator, he doesn't want to have to cancel them and spend all that extra money. And he needs to know which dates he can travel to Spain for work between now and his Christmas break, and between that Christmas break and his summer break. When he tested this, by dropping in a proposed week here and a proposed week there into the calculator, the numbers under each calculated date still said he had plenty of days left to spend in Spain. The calculator hadn't properly taken his future holiday into account. In fact, as I discovered when reviewing all of these calculators, there's only one calculator that does it properly. And I challenge anyone to compare their own calculator, their own preferred calculator, with this particular one and prove me wrong. So which Schengen visa calculator is the only one that covers every situation? I'm very glad you asked, and I have to say I'm not being paid or sponsored by this app in any way. I wish I was, but I'm not. I did the reviews solely to give you the best information because it's important for you, my viewers, and I spent far too long checking and double checking different dates and calculations to make sure they were correct. The app is called Schengen Simple, and as I speak it's only fully available on the Apple Store, but the Android version is nearing completion, so by the time some of you watch this video it could already be available. So check online. Okay, so what's the other 90-day rule? Basically, this is a question about residency. If you want to spend more than 90 days in Spain, for example, you're supposed to apply for or register for residency, depending on whether you're an EU citizen or not. This is a national law rather than a Schengen one. but the two sometimes get confused. There's a lot more to this question, so if you want to know more, ask in the comments below and I'll send you the link to one of the many videos and interviews I've done about it with experts. What's the 183-day rule? This is to do with taxation. The basic rule is that if you spend more than 183 days in Spain, for example, in the tax year, which is from January the 1st to December the 31st, then you are liable for Spanish tax. Again, there's more to it than this, and I advise you to contact a tax professional to have your circumstances checked. I can put you in touch with one. Will Spain ever change the 9180-day rule? Well, that's not something Spain can do independently because it's an EU rule, not just a Spanish one. In order to change the 9180-day rule, all of the Schengen member countries would need to be in total agreement and change the law. And from what I've read, there's not a great deal of enthusiasm in the EU for doing that. They've got more important things on their minds. And so Spain or any of the EU countries could implement an extended visitor visa if it really wanted to, so that third country nationals, especially those who have properties here, could spend the long winter months in the sun. But even if there was political will and enthusiasm for this, it's obvious from the length of time it's taken to implement the driving licence swap, for example, that any legislation would take years to become law. So don't hold your breath. Why did Spain make the 9180-day rule? Is it revenge for Brexit? Like I said, the 9180-day rule is a Schengen countries rule, and it's been in place for many years for third country nationals. The UK was actually among the countries that wrote the Schengen rules in the first place while it was part of the EU. So you can't really blame Spain for stopping UK citizens being able to stay more than 90 days. The UK decided to leave the members' club and be an outsider, thus reducing their citizens' status within the EU. It is what it is. Don't blame Spain. Is it possible to get around the 9180-day rule? Many people ask questions about how they can spend more than 90 days in the EU. What they're actually asking is, can I get around the rules? Is there a way to bend the rules? Well, the answer is no, not really. People have been trying for years. Some people get away with overstaying because their passports don't get stamped or checked properly. Well, that's not going to happen after EES. You'll always hear stories of people getting away with it, but they are actually few and far between even now while it's all about stamping. And in my opinion, it's not worth trying to get round the rules because there are punishments you wouldn't want, especially if you just have a property here or something like that. Just asking the questions is a sign that you want to kind of break the law. That makes you a naughty, sneaky little person. If you've enjoyed this video or hated it or whatever, do the usual ticks and clicks and likes and subscribes if you can be bothered. But whatever you do, check out some of the other really popular videos on YouTooSpain, and I'll see you there. Peace and love, peas and fluff. Let's dance.